Welcome to the next installment of Journey Through John. Today we continue to going through the story of the man who was born blind that Jesus healed in John chapter 9. And we'll be going through verses 8 through 17. And once again, this is just a bite-sized conversation as we go through the book of John. And we'll have a little discussion and a challenge at the end. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into verse 8. If you recall, as we talked about yesterday, the man has just been healed. Jesus spit into them and made mud into the dirt and put it on his eyes. He went and washed in the pool of Siloam as an act of obedience, and we see that he's regained his sight, and that's what we pick up today in verse 8. It says, the neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he, it is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." So they said to him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" And he answered, "The man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." And they said to him, "Well, where is he?" And he said, "I do not know." So they brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. They're going to take him to the authorities, if you will. Now, it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "The man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others say, well, how can a man who's a sinner do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him since he opened your eyes?" And he said, "He's a prophet." And so there's a couple pieces to take away here. First off, you see that there's this problem, and the Jewish people don't know how to reconcile what is going on with this man who was born blind with what they're experiencing now. And so oftentimes when you don't know what to make of a matter, you take it to people who you think can make some sense of this matter. So they take him to the Pharisees. As they'll go in and walk and talk into the Pharisees are even divided on this matter with saying, well, he can't be from God because that ruins our world. And so what can we say to explain this away? He can't be from God because he did it on the Sabbath, and that's against the law. So therefore he can't be. That can't be who he claims to be. But other people were standing there and saying, well, I hear what you're saying, but if he's not from God, how is he doing this? I mean, people aren't just walking around and healing people from blindness that they've had since birth. That just doesn't happen. In fact, we don't see this happening anywhere. We've never heard this story before. And so now there's this division that's taking place. Now, what I want us to keep in mind as we're going through the rest of the story this week is look at what the blind man is saying. It reminds me a little bit of the woman at the well. She didn't know that much about Jesus. She didn't have a theology degree. She didn't take the evangelism class. She didn't take a discipleship class. But when she had an encounter, she left the water and went and told her village, and the village came to Jesus and came to know him, and he stayed with them, and we see almost a little revival taking place. The blind man takes a similar approach. All he's saying is, this is what happened. And he repeats the same thing. This is what happened. We'll hear later on, he's like, why are you, I'm saying the exact same thing. So keep that in mind as we go through the story, because that's a great sign to us to how we're supposed to be sharing the gospel. It's not that we have all the answers in the world, but it is that we've had this encounter with Jesus. Our story has intersected with the story of Jesus, and that's how we minister. That's how we go out and tell people about Jesus. So I want to keep that in mind as we continue through the week. I do want to make this point, though, and look at the Pharisees here, and at least part of the Pharisees, the ones who said, well, he did it on the Sabbath, therefore he cannot be the Messiah. He can't be who he says he is. And I want us to look at this because sometimes Jesus is going to do things in our life, or he's going to call us to do things in our life that is going to change things. And our entire basis on reality, what we think we're banking everything to make sense on, sometimes Jesus turns that thing upside down. And are we going to be okay with that, or are we going to try to explain away what Jesus wants us to do? That's what we see these Pharisees doing. They're trying to explain this away, even though Jesus is making it very plain and very clear that he is exactly who he says he is. So that's really our challenge for today. Are there things in your life that you feel Jesus calling you to, and you're explaining away why you cannot do it, or why it's not, that can't be what he means? Why are we shrugging our shoulders and saying, I'm not sure if I'm going to dive into that. It just doesn't make sense. Now, here's what I want to say. When Jesus is calling you, it may wreck your reality, but will draw you into a kingdom reality, which is the true reality. So often we walk in a mindset of this world and how things have to operate according to this world. The reality is, if we have an eternal mindset, we realize that we have an eternal life after this. Even after this world is gone, we have eternity before us. And so how we operate, the things, the decisions we make should be based on that. Our King has told us to go and make disciples. Our King has told us to spread the word. Our King has told us to study and show ourselves approved according to what he's written us. Our King has told us to be holy because he's holy. Those are eternal things that we need to be focusing on. And we may sit back and say, well, I can't do that, so therefore I'm just not going to try. Don't do that. Listen to what the King has told you, realizing it may wreck your reality, but it's a true reality that you should be pursuing. So I hope that challenges you, and I hope you take time to think about that today as you go through your day. Once again, I hope you're encouraged and challenged as you've been watching this, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow as we continue to journey through John.